What's up, Guru Nation? Let's demystify clinical research.
Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share. Look, I dressed for the occasion. All right, U of A. Brian Ellerman, all right? He's executive director at Forge. You see the logo right here. Can you tell us, let's start with that real quick.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that. And we want to see you at SOS maybe, because it's going to be there.
Yeah.
If you're there, just stop by.
All right.
It'll be amazing. But he's had a long career. He's an entrepreneur. He's making academia fun again and practical again.
Open to.
I think you are, from what I've heard already, and I'm joining the incubator if I can. So he sold me in 5 minutes on it. So is our videographer too. Sanofi, Global Tech.
Well, I had a whole bunch of roles. All right, I'll start with what Forge is. So Forge is finding opportunities and resources to grow entrepreneurs. It is the entrepreneurial mindset unit of the University of Arizona. And I often get asked, oh, so you mean like it's the business school? Well, no, because entrepreneurship is an academic discipline. You could take classes in it, you can get a major in it. But those of you who are out there and doing life and working, you're living in the school of the world, right? You're living real life. And so our goal is to try to develop entrepreneurial mindset. How do I think about solving problems in a business setting, regardless of what my major is, regardless of what my background is, regardless of your education? So we work with students to try to cultivate entrepreneurial mindset. We work in communities to try to support them, because what we realize is that if we don't do the same thing for our communities that we're doing for our students, we're guaranteeing our students are going to move away and go somewhere else. We want them to stay. We want them to know that they come from communities. And then we run acceleration. So what we were talking about is Forge has 2 accelerators. We've got the residency and we've got the Crucible, which is announcing today who it's accepting into its very first cohort. We also do a thing called Angel Forge, where we teach students about the whole process of investing in startups. How do I value them? How do I diligence them? And so all of this is, I think, a really unique program that we run at the university.
Yeah. Are there any other universities doing something similar, or is this pretty cutting edge for universities?
So I'm aware of other institutions that have pieces of what we do. Like, for example, we've been working a lot with the executive director at Virginia Tech, the Apex Center for Entrepreneurs. But they've only focused on the student side of it. So how do students run startups? They don't have the same kind of component, they don't run an accelerator and all of that piece.
And just to make everybody excited, by the way, Brian's LinkedIn's underneath this video, and if you're listening on the podcast in the show notes, this is open to any business, not just U of A, not just Arizona.
Yeah. Anyone.
So you watching, whatever stage you're in, Brian got them categorized 1 through 9.
Yeah. We partnered with an entity called Village Capital. They're out of Washington, D.C., and they had actually developed this really sophisticated way of ranking companies based on their investment readiness. And so early stage, there's lots of resources out there. In Tucson, for example, we have Startup Tucson. Out here in Yuma, you've got the Greater Yuma Economic Development Center. So all of those help to support those really early stage. I've got an idea, who do I go to? Then you have incubators, and we've got a number of incubators across the state. UACI is one that's affiliated with the University of Arizona. It's called the University of Arizona Center for Innovation. UACI does incubation all over. What comes next is the key piece, because I've also spent a good part of my life as an investor and evaluating whether something is a good investment as a startup. There's a good bit of subjectivity, but there's a lot of it that really has to do with hearing the right things. Do I see the right team? Do I think that there's a decent sized market for it? Is my investment actually, does it have a fair probability of getting returned to me? Hopefully more than just my investment, a little multiple of it, and a number of other things. And the issue I often encounter with early stage founders is that they're focused on how cool their technology is, or how brilliant it is, or sort of they're coming at it from the side of the founder and rather than understanding the investor's perspective and
Right.
why they're there.
Right.
And so that's a big part of what we're trying to do with our programs is in the first one, the residency, lasts 12 months, costs nothing, open to anybody. We do have residency in Phoenix, in Tucson, and Yuma.
So that's the one me and Daniel are going to do. The one
And
in Yuma.
we have mentors and residents who are based here, and we can offer all kinds of resources to the companies that participate in it.
All right, Daniel, we're doing that one together, man.
Then we have the Crucible, which is the one that we're just launching. Now, right now, that's specific to Tucson
Yeah.
because that's the one that actually pays you to be in the program.
That one was cool. I missed out. Man, I couldn't have done it even if I didn't miss out, and I didn't have anyone to send.
You
I
gotta be at
needed
the
my
right-
staff here.
You got to be at the right point in time in your own company, right? I always talk about the distinction with executives and founders is that you spend so much of your time working in the business,
Yeah.
it's really hard to find time to work on the business.
I tell you guys, okay, perfect transition. We're going to get to your career with Sanofi especially, but there's a lot of, right now, August 2023, clinical research market is hot. Used to be DCT, bunch of venture capital flooding that market. Now they seem to be moving to sites, actual sites, like traditional, like mine. You're getting a lot of owners thinking now, hey, maybe I want to sell my site. You got a lot of people on the sidelines thinking maybe I should start a site in order to sell it. You're uniquely positioned to have this conversation with, probably the most unique I can think of in this industry. You understand what the investors want, and you understand the site game enough. Our research site's a good investment for venture capital.
I mean, and I don't know that there's a single answer to the question, right? Because I think, so let's talk a little bit about my background because I think that'll offer some
Okay.
context. So I spent 15 years, it was Aventis when I joined, became Sanofi Aventis, and then Sanofi by the time I left. And the last 5 years I was with the company, I really had a corporate global role. From 2013 to 2015, I was the global head of tech scouting. My job was to go find really innovative and interesting companies around the world, working with scouts all over the place to kind of figure out what's innovative that could change the way that Sanofi does its business. Funny enough, one of the companies we met is called Science 37, and they're based out of LA
No kidding.
and run decentralized clinical trials. So this was really the beginning of them. They were, I think, 8 people when I met them.
You met them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I became their sort of champion inside of Sanofi because
Wow.
I saw this as a game changer for the way that that Pharma does clinical trials.
And what year approximately was this?
Would have been 2014, I think. And so careful what you wish for, because of course here I am cheerleading for them. We ended up investing in them, we Sanofi,
Wow.
as a strategic investor. And fast forward, now I get asked, okay, since you were so passionate about that decentralized clinical trial, why don't you come and be part of this new program to try to disrupt the clinical trial operations for Sanofi, which at least at that point in time was $4 billion a year that the company spent on trial ops. And so that's a big ship to try to move. But one of the things we brought into it was this decentralized approach. How can we do, wearable devices, mobile apps, and especially thinking about the, a PI here and your participants all over the place.
We got 2 of those 3 things being done right now.
And I think it changed the game. If you've got the technology platform to be able to pull those pieces together. We were looking, for example, Sanofi had a big presence in diabetes. I think $7 billion a year in sales. Well, that's great if you were, an adult. But if you wanted to move into the pediatric, you wanted to move into geriatric, very different. We'd never proven those out. And we thought maybe the decentralized trial was the best solution, because you think about trying to recruit a child into a trial, you're not just recruiting one person, you're recruiting at least 2. You got a caregiver. The same is true at the other end. So what could we do to make technology easier so you didn't have to pull the kid out of school, to go and, have endpoints measured and whatever else you've got to do, which of course parent is happy about, but so is the kid, because what kid wants to be known as, oh, that's the one that has to go to their, doctor, go do this other thing, right? The kids want to just be kids. The other end of the spectrum with the geriatric population, same thing, where you have decreasing staff at a lot of these homes for a large population of seniors. You can't get a ride for them, for one person to go and do something, and so here again, we could bring in wearable devices and mobile apps as a mechanism for being able to reach and recruit and retain, which was the other problem we were running into.
So I never knew the drug companies. That's really interesting. Like myself, Brad, Dr. Fox, I know you guys are watching because I'm sending you this link. We actually talk about Life Sciences 37 as a model for what could have been but did not become. But I never knew, I knew drug companies influenced a lot of these companies with board seats maybe, or just connections.
Yeah.
I didn't know they actually invested in.
Yeah.
Is that common amongst these DCT companies, or?
I think it is very common now. I don't know that it was common at the time when we were looking at them.
Okay.
And pharmas talk to each other. We all sort of, in fact, one of the reasons I got pulled into the whole thing was that some other pharma company had launched their digital health initiative, and our board said, well, what are we doing in digital health? And so next thing you know, okay, we've got to have a digital health effort.
And that was you.
Well, I was part of that group, yes. I think the early days, it was more one of let's do pilots where we can test this out. I don't think anybody was so convinced that they just immediately plunked down the money. As I recall with Science 37, the investment was probably 2 or 3 years post when I had originally sort of scouted them and started the pilot process. So it took some time to prove the concept out.
Was that one of the big ones maybe that you, with Sanofi at least, that you were involved with, or?
They were one of the most interesting ones
for
me because it changed my perspective. I had come out of the R&D world, my own background of biochemistry, clinical pathology, and then information systems. And so I was always a health technologist. So I always thought about the intersection of those two, but could never really find the perfect marriage. I could always find something that was either really innovative health with a bit of tech or really innovative tech with a touch of health. And this was one of the very first things that just truly showed me where the two pieces can come together. And it wasn't just a solution in search of a problem, it was a legitimate solution to a legitimate problem.
I see. Do you know if Sanofi still owns shares of it?
I don't know. And, and to be clear, I left at the end of 2017.
Okay.
I had been traveling so much at that point. I just, and I had one kid entering high school, one kid entering college.
Yeah.
And I was long away from home. And actually, it's an important piece of the Forge story, which is the mayor of Tucson had asked me to lead a health innovation initiative there in 2017. And
let's hold on. No mayor asked me anything ever. Even the mayor of Yuma, I actually interviewed him, Mayor Doug, but they don't ask me. I had to find them. How do you get asked by the mayor of a big city like?
I don't know. Lucky,
LinkedIn?
I guess.
LinkedIn?
Yes, that wasn't through LinkedIn. No, but it was just one of those things where we were able to put together this really great meeting that had Southern Arizona leadership, plus a number of people from the health industry all together in a room to talk about what kinds of resources do we have. And out of that, I heard a couple really clear things. One, amazing resources. Like we have an abundance, a wealth of things, but no clear plan of how to put all those things together. And then the third part, and that was really the Forge origin, was thinking about how well are we preparing students for what comes after graduation. I talked to a number of those executives, and they were always telling me how they'd have to spend 5-6 months working with the students just to kind of get that, or not students, I'm sorry, the graduates, just to get them kind of to a point where they were conversant in the business world. And I thought, well, that's something we should be able to overcome pretty easily. And so Mayor and I started out on, okay, could we launch some kind of incubator downtown? Around that same time, Rio Nuevo, the development district, was working with Biosphere 2 on some kind of environmental sustainability incubator. All ended up in President Robbins' office, who kind of said, hey, look, you guys can both solve two problems, one solution.
Yeah.
Let's see what you could build in downtown Tucson. And that's kind of how the Forge at Roy Place effort began. And
so everything connects.
Yeah.
In your career, and we're zigzagging through. We're going to have to do part 2, 3. Every time you come to Yuma, I want to do a podcast. But sites, right now it's hot for sites. So people are thinking like, hey, we want to sell.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people right now are thinking, I want to start a site to sell. What do you think, knowing what you know, like how does that play out, do you think? Educated guess, we're all just guessing, but your guess is more valuable than most.
I don't know. I think I told you, you know more every day than I probably have forgotten since I left.
Well, combined, we could get pretty good guess.
So there's always a tendency to chase trends, and I feel like if you're going after something when it's already hot, you're already too late.
Too late.
Right? I mean,
you think it's too late right now?
I can't assess this specific market, but what I see is that by the time people realize that something is taken off, it's probably already sailed, or at least to the extent that the whole value of getting in those early stages is that you can invest that sweat equity and really build up something. You come in now, you're buying at a premium because everybody else is thinking the same thing.
They're going 6 to 10 times EBITDA right now for sites. For traditional, we have a client, shout out DSC Site Network, 2 years. She went from 0 to 2, she got to like 1.5 EBITDA, sold for 8. 2 years.
Yeah. But started when?
2 years. She sold it last year, so
3 years
around
ago.
COVID. Yeah.
Which might also, this is the other challenge, is it is really hard to decouple the pandemic effect.
Yeah.
Like, what part of what's going on is because it's actually just a rebound back to where we were or would have been versus what is a genuine trend and opportunity.
What do you think?
I think it's what you often see is you see an overcorrection, so it'll bounce farther, but then it'll settle back to the mean, which means you could get burned if you're buying on that little lift.
The investors can get burned.
Yeah.
But the site owners, they're okay with that.
Well, I guess it depends. If they're the ones that are thinking about buying, then they're buying on that.
So just, maybe I shouldn't say this on the video, but who cares? I would never buy a site. I would, because I know what I'm doing. I would just start one from scratch, and in 2-3 years, I can either keep it and it's running on its own, because I know what you were saying. I always tell them too, work on your business, not in it. Find systems, build systems, train. That's everything. Training, biz dev, like patient recruitment, everything, to where you do not need to be in the business, like day to day. You could be out doing a podcast while people are screening patients right now. Now, I'm at a startup. I can do it halfway. I'm not full, but the systems haven't been developed yet, like fully. So you can, let's say the market cools off. Well, you have a passive, basically good cash flow generating business, and you can wait for the next top market if there is one.
I think so. In my experience, I tend to see the trends ahead of when they happen, and by the time they're a trend, I'm already moving on to the next thing and thinking of something else. I also am always interested in what we call the moats. So how do you separate yourself from the competition? What
right.
makes you unique? What makes you defensible from those others?
That's right.
And I think the thing I would be really careful about in any of this, whether it's sites or other things, is what are the differentiators? What's the thing that's going to make this asset more valuable than something that looks very, very similar? Like, how does it stand out? If you can answer those questions,
That's the problem with sites. Sites are ubiquitous.
Right.
The only differentiating factor like you can have is geography. All right, there's no other site in Yuma. Great. So you deserve higher multiple than someone else. We have multiple PIs. Like you can make a little bit of differentiation, but at the end of the day, a site is a site.
Yeah. I do look at, so one of the reasons why I'm really excited about Forge at Yuma is the demographics and the just huge swing that's going on right now. You know, I remember, I mean, I've lived in Tucson for almost 30 years. And you and I both know what Yuma's reputation has been for people who live in Tucson or Phoenix, which is a gas stop on the way to San Diego. No one ever really stopped. And I remember it was a few years ago, and we had stopped, and we actually came down into, not far from here actually, and I'm standing out there filling my car, and I'm like, you know, Yuma was actually a really nice place. I mean, it wasn't just a gas stop. It actually felt like a real town with people. I saw folks waving to each other. They knew each other. And so then in coming back here and starting up Forge at Yuma, I'm hearing about the trend toward like the 25 to 34-year-old demographic is fastest growing here in the entire state. You have, you know, some of the best schools, brand new schools, like all of these things are really good indicators. Mm-hmm. So then I think about the clinical side of this and what's the unique opportunity where you might have an age or income or ethnographic opportunity you don't even have in a Tucson or a Phoenix, but you might have here. Mm. You know, so that, and that's just one example, right? That's what everybody kind of has to think about is where you are, what is the thing that makes you unique that would be really hard for someone somewhere else to replicate it. Like, you can't change the demographics of a location overnight. Yuma has been coming for some time, right?
Yeah.
And now what it is might represent a special opportunity for people who know how to tap into that demographic shift.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think for us, we noticed there was a lot. So I've had sites in Orange County. I'm from Orange County. From 2005 till 2021, when we moved here, I was in Orange County, Inland Empire, doing research sites. It's never been easier for me to get a study than here. I get every study. My colleagues back home, how'd you get that study? Send it to me. Send me the contact. All of them. It's because of what you just mentioned.
Exactly.
The diversity play, the untapped market. So, yeah, I see what you're saying. And shout out to Yuma. Thank you for recognizing that.
Absolutely.
What about CRO space? So, see, part two, we're going to have to go more in your career because this one's more like trends. Sponsors want to do more things themselves. Do you think that's the case?
You're right. That should definitely be a part two, especially when I gotta take off shortly.
Yeah, this could be 3 hours. Daniel, sorry, man. This might be till 4. You good?
Yeah, I mean, sponsors have always talked about doing more, and yet somehow they don't. I think it's about whether or not so CROs can demonstrate that they can provide a value add and do something that is special and unique that would be really difficult for the sponsor to recreate or reproduce or have to bring in-house, right? I mean, we're just not at that moment in time where people are trying to internalize these kinds of things. They're still outsourcing it. So the short answer is I think CROs still have a place, but I think it's a more nuanced conversation.
And then for maybe a teaser for the part two, how did you even get started in clinical research to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I kind of came out of the clinical pathology side. I'd worked in hospital labs for several years. I worked at SunQuest, which became Mises, which became SunQuest. on the laboratory information system side. I was accidental. I actually had left, well, the division at Sunquest got eliminated that I was a part of, so I went and worked on my golf game. And I was actually in my backswing when Aventus called, and they were looking for someone with a scientific computing background, which I was.
Your resume was out there?
Yeah, it was like a headhunter kind of service that was looking for someone with my skill set and needed a short-term like consultant. And I thought, yeah, this will be like a nice 6-month gig, and then I'll go back to golf. And then 15 years went by.
15 years.
And over those 15 years, I had, I don't know, 5, 6 different roles with the company. It started in early research, like the absolute beginnings of it, all the way up. And then I just kind of kept progressing my way along in the chain. And it was definitely when we got to this point of the distributed clinical trials that I found like, this is really my sweet spot. I love this stuff.
I see. Any similarities? You worked at two beasts of organizations, U of A now, Sanofi. Any similarities, differences?
I mean, similarity, I suppose, in the sense that when you get to a certain size, you have to centralize a lot of your administrative and other functions. Those have pros and cons. You can run them more efficiently with people who are specifically trained. On the upside, on the downside, they're not part of your organization if you're running one like I do, so you have to rely on those shared services. I think being relatively localized, the university is quite different from Sanofi with 130,000 employees all over the world. So there's some clear distinctions there, and budgets are working for a state entity versus working for a publicly traded company, quite different.
But yet both somehow tried to implement elements of entrepreneurship with them.
Yeah, well, in Sanofi, I ended up having this kind of interesting role of trying to ringlead innovation with all of these different units around the world. And now at the U of A, I'm the Innovation Council Chair, and it's not actually as lofty as it sounds. What it really means is that you have a giant university doing $800+ million of research a year. What does that mean to the average person? When you talk to most people, you say the University of Arizona, they're like, oh, I love their basketball team, right? Like they don't really think about all of these other aspects. And so a big part of why the unit that I'm part of is called Research, Innovation, and Impact is because innovation and impact need to go hand in hand. We need to be able to talk about how we're innovative, and then we need to show what impact it's having. And often that's on an economic development level.
Well, we definitely got to do part 2 and 3 because
yes,
you got to get going.
I do.
But Brian, if you're somebody that owns a site or wants to start a company or owns a company, patient recruitment, now there's DE&I companies springing up all over the place. This is the guy you want to connect with. So you can get hit by a good amount of people. Thank you very much, Brian. We'll do part 2, part 3, and so on. Everybody go connect, like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye-bye.